to Sword and Board. I'm Luke.
And I'm Lars.
This is two guys talking about every fantasy movie ever made. Lars, how are you? It's been a while.
It has been a while. I am doing great. We got to watch our son ride his bicycle with training wheels for the first time yesterday, and that was pretty incredible. That was pretty incredible. We got to see like the whole myriad of emotions of it, where we said, hey, let's go down to the park and let's ride our bikes. And he got on his bike and he hated it. This bike's broken. I don't like this. To the euphoria of, Dad, leave me alone. I want to do this myself, and everything in between. Nice. So it was pretty cool. Not as adventurous, though, as what you've been doing, and I want to hear all about that.
So we just moved from a swampy hell of southern Alabama to it is currently 17 degrees in Denver, Colorado. It has snowed the past 3 days. It is magical. I can walk outside and not burst into flames.
There you go.
Because I actually like going outside. I like hiking. I like going out and doing outdoorsy things. Mm-hmm. But for the past 10 years, if I do, I will die.
Right.
And I like living. I like not, having
there are positives to it.
Yeah, exactly.
Living.
But no, we decided we needed a change, so we decided to pack up what we could, staying with some friends for a little while. It's nice.
Very cool. Yeah, I've always felt that, as much as I love North Carolina, I think one of the main reasons behind it is that it's that nice mix of hot and cold where I can always put enough on to be warm. I can never take enough off to be cold. Mm-hmm. So whenever we would visit Alabama, visit you and Mom and Dad, woof, it was always just really, really uncomfortable. Now, I also don't like freezing my tail off, but you can always put stuff on.
That, but
yeah,
exactly.
But that's awesome, man. I'm really excited for you. I'm glad that you made it out there safe and sound.
Yeah, me too. It's nice. We haven't done a whole lot of exploring yet, but we're catching back up on all that. Just trying to feel things out one day at a time. But I'm enjoying it so far.
That's great. Yeah. That's great.
So what wasn't enjoyable?
Right. Yes. So the opposite of watching your firstborn accomplish wonders and moving across driving across country and seeing this beautiful land of ours.
That was something that, before we go, that was something I did really appreciate, is that we drove and there were no lines. There was no, I'm now in Tennessee, I'm now in Missouri. That was just, I could have driven and it was all one place. And I really appreciated that in a pragmatic sense. Or not even a pragmatic sense,
we're all the same.
American sense.
Yeah,
exactly.
you don't get into, I don't know when I'm in Virginia and North Carolina and South Carolina. It all just kind of blends, which is nice.
There was one moment I remember we were talking about stuff as we were driving, and we ended up in northern Missouri, I believe. It was either not northern Missouri, northern Arkansas or northern Mississippi. I don't remember exactly where. And we are in the backwoods. Mm-hmm. And somehow we got talking about stuff, and Victoria mentioned the Roman Empire, and they really make sense about how they conquered the world with roads. And I'm thinking to myself, me 30 years old, the Romans, they had slavery, they had all these other things, and then me driving backwards all this after on terrible roads, Pax Romana,
right?
Getting SPQR tattooed,
right? Excellent. So we've decided this episode to do one movie. Mm-hmm. And it's a movie that I saw in the theater, and I think you said you saw in the theater as well, right?
Yep, I did. I saw it at a midnight showing.
Yeah, I was excited about this one. And the movie we're going to talk about today, folks, is The Last Airbender. M. Night Shyamalan's adaptation of the Nickelodeon show Avatar: The Last Airbender. And I was not initially an Avatar fan, just because that kind of came at the end of my Nickelodeon watching. So when I think of Nickelodeon, I think Hey Dude, I think Doug, I think Snick, I think all, Double Dare, and Guts, all that kind of stuff.
It did take a little while for you to get, not back into cartoons, but come back around to oh, hey, cartoons are good again. I remember that a little bit.
Yeah, and because there were just other things I was watching, and I just wasn't, it wasn't that I was dogging on cartoons. I was watching other stuff. And I think you and then my buddy Craig in college was a huge fan. He's like, oh man, you got to watch this. So I was like, all right, I'll watch it. And it was great. It really was this fantastic show And then the movie wasn't. So
Here's
what's
the
your take?
I don't know if you saw my show notes, but the first 3 lines of it are just ugh.
Yeah.
Like I've that comes up several times.
Yep.
It's beautiful.
There's the one.
Costuming, yeah, the costuming is incredible. I'll say that it looks wonderful.
And very distinctive between all the. So for those of you that have not seen the television show Avatar: The Last Airbender, what is a quick rundown of what the story was about?
Okay, so Otherworld, where there are these 4 groups of people. There are these groups of people who are called benders, and they can manipulate elements. And there's one of all the 4 elements: fire, air, water, earth. There are 4 nations, and each member of the nation can only have one bending type. There's the Fire Nation. There's the air nomads, the Water tribes, and the Earth Kingdom. And
then they can eat like the Earth people can move Earth, and the Fire people can move fire, and right. So, but an Earth person can't move water.
Right, and so every generation there's a person called the Avatar. There's a cycle where he's born in one member of each nation, and he can do all 4 elements. And every time he dies, he's reborn into the next tribe. There's a whole cycle of them. And then 100 years before the show starts, everything changed when the Fire Nation attacked. They decided to try and take over the world, and the last Airbender he's the Avatar, and he's a kid named Aang, who's like 12, and he's this goofy, kid who his whole thing is that he's the guy who's going to save the world, and we don't know if he can.
Right, because he hasn't learned it.
Right,
and he. I get, he'd run away and he was trapped in ice.
Mm-hmm.
So he's kind of very much like Captain America. And the show basically picks up with us discovering him.
Right.
Much like this movie.
There's that line in the show of like, well, Aang, why didn't you tell us you were the Avatar? It's like, well, I never wanted to be.
Right.
And so that's this whole thing is trying to accept who he is.
Right. And the Avatar basically, he's the one. He's almost like the Anakin or whatever. He's going to bring like balance to the nations, world, yeah. Right? Like he's the one that can, he kind of keeps everybody in line. That's the show. And how many seasons were there? Were there 4 books? 3 books.
Water, Earth, and Fire. And then there was the sequel series,
right.
Legend of Korra, which was about his successor.
Right.
Which was also incredible.
So 3 seasons. So one season was about. So basically, like the first season he's an airbender, so he can move air, but he hasn't learned how to make.
He can't do the other elements very well.
So each book or each season is him learning
be better with
the other element. And that's what this movie is. This movie is basically the first book. It's him gaining the power of water because he already has air.
Yeah, and part of the problem of this movie is time. They condensed 20 episodes, about 7.5 hours of story into just under 2 hours.
Which is a problem.
And there's this huge rush to the climax, but the climax is the last 40 minutes in the movie, where the siege of the Northern Water Tribe, that is probably the last 45 minutes or so.
Yeah.
And we get to there, and then it kind of puts on the brakes again. I didn't care. It relies so much on being a fan of the show to fill in the blanks of who these people are and their personalities.
Yeah, and that was the biggest thing with all of this is just, and there's a lot wrong with this movie, and we'll talk about a lot of it. But Patton Oswalt had a really great, he wrote an essay about Zack Snyder's The Watchmen.
Okay.
And how when you make an adaptation of something, you have to adapt it. You have to translate it into a new medium. So if you're adapting the Watchmen comic book, you shouldn't be slavishly beholden to the panels that Alan Moore drew. You can take inspiration from it, but you kind of have to do your own thing. So
Dave Gibbons.
Right. Okay. So you're right. Sorry, Dave. But he said that the best part of the Watchmen movie was like the prison breakout scene, like because that was something new. Like that was something that was adapted for a film that you couldn't do in the comic book.
Right. That amazing sequence at the beginning of Watchmen of that was genius.
That was wonderful, and that's something that's not in the comic book, and that's something that a film medium allows you to do. A film, an adaptation of a cartoon, there are things that allow you can do different things with a movie that you can't do with an animated cartoon.
And there's
and
there's things
vice versa.
Yeah.
But if you're going to adapt it, you need to play to those strengths. And unfortunately, this is a condensation of, like you said, a series of television, and they didn't adapt it. So what this should have done was this should have been a standalone movie. Mm-hmm. You know, with maybe potential for sequel, but you should have had like a focus on who this character is, what the world is, really set all that up and make it a standalone story like the original Star Wars. Because you can watch the original Star Wars from beginning to end and never have to watch another one. Like, that's it. I watched a Star Wars. It is done.
Right.
But what they did was they went in planning on it being a trilogy.
Well, that's the nature of, that's one of the downsides of major filmmaking is you have to make a franchise because you have to make infinite money.
Right. And unfortunately, that doesn't lend itself often to really great stories.
No. And
this was just like you said, you really had to understand what the show was to fill in the blanks. But I want to watch these characters do something, and it was so rushed.
It only seemed like there were two actors who cared, and they cared in radically different ways. The guy playing Uncle Iroh, he seemed to think he was in a serious movie.
Yep.
And he actually acted, and he had weight to what he was doing. Mm-hmm. And Uncle Iroh might be my favorite character in the original show. Mm-hmm. He might be everyone's favorite character.
Yeah.
Because he's just a friendly little tea-drinking guy.
Right.
And the guy playing Admiral Zhao, because he seemed to realize he was in a garbage movie.
Right.
Yeah, he was doing the Raul Julia in Street Fighter.
Yeah, and Bison, absolutely.
Exactly.
Yeah. The tone was what a major problem was of this movie. So, you know, like you said, the Avatar, he's this goofy kid. Mm-hmm. And in the cartoon, they play that up a little bit. And they're fine with that. And it like the tone, it's not a kiddie cartoon. I don't want it to say, you know, but there are silly elements, and that's fine because it's about kids. They tried to make this so serious,
and and then
and you lose that.
And then the few bits of like, oh, he's a kid, we need to do it. They immediately undercut it, like, oh, and he sees the corpses of the air nomads.
Yeah. Oh my God.
Talk about a tonal break.
So tone deaf, and okay, I've been dancing around this so far. The acting in it,
garbage.
The worst kind of garbage. Like, I don't have this aversion to child actors that I feel like a lot of people have. Mm-hmm. Because there's some really great movies with child performances in them. Mm-hmm. The Goonies is a bunch of kids that actually sound like kids. They're swearing. They're having an adventure. They're great. They're great performances, in my opinion. There are plenty of other examples of child actors that are not, like, you want to rip your ears out. And they're just, like, obviously being coaxed off screen with candy by overbearing stage parents.
Yeah.
This is the worst child acting I've ever seen. Ever.
So part of the problem, not part of the problem, one of the things I remember reading about and a lot of the people talking about was that because it's a heavily Asian themed show, that Aang, as they keep saying, Ong, they went out of their way to pronounce the names differently, and I don't get it.
Yep.
You know, they're all Asian, and they cast a bad acting white boy.
Like, if you have to get a white kid to play him,
why did you get a bad one, so to speak?
Right. Well, I guess I heard they got him because he was like a karate champion or something like that.
Okay. Yeah. It's like in GI, like the GI Joe movies, they got Ray Park to play Snake Eyes. Because if you don't let Ray Park talk, he's an incredibly physical actor, and what doesn't Snake Eyes do? Talk.
Right.
Yeah, it's perfect.
Right, but oh my God, it was horribly whitewashed, except for the Fire Nation. The Fire Nation, at least, but you know, they're vaguely Arabic, so you know they can always be bad guys in Hollywood movies because that's just a thing, which is awful. But just everybody, like, there wasn't like a heart to it. I didn't understand. There just wasn't like a spark. I didn't see the reason why the people that made this movie. You know, when I think it was Sam Raimi, when he made the first Spider-Man, they asked him, like, you know, why should you make the Spider-Man movie? And he showed him a picture of his childhood room, and he had like a Spider-Man painting on his wall. Yeah. You know, so he loved Spider-Man. And, you know, Peter Jackson grew up reading the Lord of the Rings books, you know, and he was invested in that world.
He made Lord of the Rings so he could make a King Kong movie.
Well, yeah. Right. But you know, like he was passionate about those things. And Steven Spielberg loved those old serials, and like you can feel the passion for those movies in Indiana Jones. George Lucas, absolutely. So you can feel those passion projects. I don't think M. Night Shyamalan gave a damn about The Last Airbender.
Or if he did, he gave a weird damn in like the things that he focused on weren't the things that everyone else cared about.
Right. And it was just, I think, how much of this suffered because he was attached to it?
I don't know, because he's a talented director. I think they needed a name put to the movie to sell it, and he might have had an open slot in his movie, in his schedule, and he has a name on there. He has some story cred, some Hollywood cred, because he's got...
Yeah. So M. Night Shyamalan, yes, he has a name. I agree with you there. But that's a name that's kind of been tarnished, and I feel like this was like on the downturn of that tarnishing. The man makes Sixth Sense. It blows everybody's mind. I mean, I remember we were in New Orleans at the time when it came out. It was in the paper every day, like number one movie again, number one movie again. Like, it was this huge thing. And then he makes Unbreakable, and that was such a good movie. That was such a neat. I loved Unbreakable.
Yep. And then he made Signs.
And fine. But then they start going down to the point where I vividly remember being in a theater and a trailer came on, and it was these people stuck in an elevator.
Devil.
And it looked really creepy. And people were kind of getting into it. Like, oh, wow, what is this? From the mind of M. Night Shyamalan. And everyone just started bursting out laughing. And I was like, oh, that guy is done. He's kind of had a resurgence. I mean, he made Split, which was pretty good. He made, Glass, obviously, and all that kind of stuff. But just, I feel like, they wanted to get a name, but he was a really weird choice for this kind of movie.
Here's how I know that they didn't quite understand the material. So they adapted like 5 or 6 episodes of the original of the first season. Like when they go off to find the things, there's that weird prison sequence that they seem to have in there because the Blue Spirit costume looks cool.
Right.
And then there's the prison with the Earthbenders. In the show, Earthbenders can bend Earth, correct?
Yes.
So,
and the logic of that,
in the show, this Earthbender prison is on a metal prison on water, and so they can't do anything.
Which makes sense.
Yes. In the movie, it's in like a valley surrounded by rock.
It's in anywhere. It's just we're just here. You're basically giving people all the raw material they need to escape. It's like locking
MacGyver in the closet.
Yeah, it's locking prisoners up in a prison full of keys. Like, that's basically just what are you doing? What are you doing? It doesn't make any sense. And then why didn't they realize that before he came in? This whole time I was just beating my head against the wall, just like, what the hell is this movie? I mean, there's not a lot that can be said. I mean, like you said, it was a pretty-looking movie. The costumes are great. They did a good job of distinguishing between the different elemental tribes.
I don't even want to say this is shiny and not magic, because it was dull.
Yeah, it was dull and not magic. I mean, it was just, what a neat idea, and they just completely blew it. Like, just completely missed the mark. Horrible dialogue, horrible delivery of dialogue. Characters that were not given time to understand.
Yeah.
I don't get the brother and sister unless I've watched the show.
Right.
And then I don't get the importance of the Avatar if I haven't watched the show.
And they really emphasized, they not really, they didn't really emphasize anything. They tried to make it more about the spirit world in this, which that was always a part of the show, but they made it a more big deal. They made it a bigger deal of like, he's part of the spirit world.
Yeah, okay.
But they didn't do anything. They didn't say anything. They didn't give us time to care. And
the fights in it, I mean, it had neat choreography. They kind of flip around, but there's no weight to it because I don't understand the characters. And if I don't understand the characters, then that's just them flipping around.
Right.
Yeah, I'm glad they didn't make more of them. Apparently Netflix was going to do...
I think they're still doing one.
Yeah, okay.
But they're doing a series. They're not doing a movie, they're doing a series.
Which, okay, like, then that would be good.
You've got more time to...
Yeah, you have more time to just let these kind of stuff, breathe. I love the arrogance of they ended on this kind of cliffhanger. We have to prevent him from mastering earth and fire. did you really think they're going to make another one of these? Like, did anybody, like, at the end of the screening, did they all look around and just like, woo?
So the person most robbed by these movies is the girl that is going to play, that was they had scheduled to play Azula, because that's Margot from The Magicians.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and like, oh, that's perfect. Like, I've seen her in stuff lately, and that's perfect.
Yeah, but unfortunately,
nothing happened.
Nothing happened.
Ugh. So.
Uggh. Uggh, The Last Airbender. Just not happy with this one.
No.
It's I don't think anybody. I mean, obviously nobody watched it because nobody went on to go see it.
It made a modest profit.
Right.
Because that's what you want from your major Hollywood production. A modest profit.
Yeah, and what it did, and I think this is probably, it's the case for a lot of things that, the adaptations of different properties. It makes it so you can't do it again for a while.
Yeah.
You can't make a Justice League movie again. You don't get to do that one over.
Not for a while. Yeah.
For a while. That sucks. Because I'd like to see a Justice League movie, but you can't do one for a while now. Mm-hmm. Netflix is redoing, as a TV show, but this movie came out 10 years ago. So, it
took a while.
When it squanders such great source material, not only are we forced to sit through a bad movie, we're robbed for the opportunity to see a better version of this for a long time.
It's climate change on a film scale.
It's right, exactly. We yes, that's perfect. That is perfect, Lucas. Is that it's what could have been? We robbed future generations of a better version of this movie. That's what happened with this.
Yeah,
it's not Deathstalker bad.
No,
because that's that's offensively bad, and it's definitely not like Lord of Elves bad. No. That's offensively bad, and from a moral standpoint, that's offensively bad.
But I think I'd rather watch the Nutcracker.
Yeah,
because that didn't put it at that didn't have other properties behind it. That didn't make me think of better times.
And it didn't whitewash, or what was it?
Whitewashing.
It was whitewashing, but I heard something.
Race
it was like race bending. Yep. So it didn't completely do that. It
was prettier.
Nutcracker was prettier.
Nutcracker had Morgan Freeman.
Nutcracker had better acting. I mean, there was actual acting in Nutcracker. Yeah. Yes, I would put. So is that what is in between? Is Nutcracker and Deathstalker?
That puts it at 33.
Yeah, this goes between. This puts. Yeah, I would say The Last Airbender goes right there.
I would agree.
What do you
with
think?
That 100%. Perfect.
Yeah, this perfect. I don't. Here's okay. So, just as it's a shame that they made this movie because it prevented future generations from having a great film version of The Last Airbender. What this podcast has allowed me to do is I will never have to watch this again. I'm done with it. It's out of my life. I can just let it go away. So that's yes, it stinks that it's around, but at least this podcast has helped me to let it go. So thank you, Lucas, for that.
Welcome.
Thank you. Lucas, where can people find us on the interwebs?
They can find us on Twitter at SwordInBoardcast. Also on Instagram, the same thing. Nothing posted on there yet, but working on it. We are on Stitcher and Podbean and Apple iTunes and Spotify. If you have a movie you want us to talk about, shoot us a line at swordandboardcast@gmail. There's a link on our Twitter page as well. Our theme song is Goblin Road Trip by Ryan Boyd. You can find him at Ryan Boyd. Lars, you got anything else you want to see?
Do I want to see or do I want to say?
Say. I'm sorry. Say. I kind of slurred there.
He's living in Colorado for like a week and he's already just so much.
The air out here is very different.
It's not just rarefied, it's stankified. And have you, to be honest, I mean, I'm not,
No. To be honest, no, I have not.
Have you? I mean, is it pretty prevalent? I mean, what is that like?
Depends on where you are. It's interesting. So, you drive around a place, you see an urgent care facility, and it's got a red cross on the side of the building. Yeah. Okay, make about a third of those green crosses.
Ah, okay. They have that with like CBD places around here like that.
Yeah, but these are actual
dispensaries.
They're dispensaries. Yeah. The weirdest thing so far, you're walking around a city, You go to a park. What's all over the park?
Pigeons.
They're geese here.
Geese are everywhere.
Yeah, and not just like a couple, one or two. Although there have been a couple, one or two on the side of the road. Everywhere.
See, that would freak me out if I was in a state that had dispensaries everywhere. Because geese like hiss at you.
Are horrifying.
Geese are horrifying. That's not the animal. If I have indulged in these products, I don't want to see a bunch of geese everywhere. That make me stay inside the house.
And I'm sure that they're gonna move, when the seasons change. But it's just this. The fuck are all these geese doing here?
Don't they fly south for the winter?
I suppose. Why are they here?
I mean, I guess you're south of a place, but I would think that they'd fly even more souther.
Southern?
More southern, yeah, whatever.
Words are hard.
Words are hard. Well, great, man. Well, hey, thank you all for listening, and we will see you next time.
Yes, we will. Have a good one. Bye.